let's get into the big topic of open source, something that we actually say at Red Hat.
This is so awesome.
We are an open culture that believes in importance of
What is that process that a developer, or let's say,
as the Kubernetes ecosystem really boomed.
Welcome to In the Clouds. I am your host, Stu Miniman, and this is our first episode for 2023. When I've done interviews for many years, most of the people that I usually target when I think about my audience is that, they're my peers in the IT world, and a lot of those are on the track to maybe eventually become a CIO. So I'm really thrilled to have as my first guest here, Jim Palermo, who was just, towards the end of last year, named the CIO of Red Hat. So we're going to be digging in on the journey to CIO. Jim, it's great to see you. Thank you so much for joining us. And, those of us inside Red Hat, we look at it and say, boy, it looks like you're inside the tower. Yes?
Yeah, I sure am. Well, Stu, great to be with you, and Happy New Year. And I happen to be in the tower this week, trying to get back in, kind of living that hybrid work style, home and home.
Yeah, definitely. I'm definitely threatening one of these days I will do another in-person interview for In the Clouds. We actually did one in the annex right next to the tower last year. My manager, Chris Morgan, and I got to try out that big cave that they have of a studio. Our CEO has some nice video setups now in the Boston office, which is right where I am. So I'll definitely take advantage of those, get some Boston interviews. But it's still doing these over the camera is okay. So, Jim, the journey to CIO, I wondered, you and I have talked a little bit, I've looked at your background. You and I both have, a lot of networking in our backgrounds. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got into IT? Was, CIO kind of the goal of what you were looking at? How did you get to where we are today?
Yeah, well, Stu, I think with, anybody that gets into this role, that the journey is winding, shall we say. It's not the same path for everybody. I think honestly, if I was to say that I was, my aspirations when I got into the computer science field and started my work career to be CIO, I don't really think that's where I thought I was going to go. I think that I was passionate about technology, started as a software developer, but I was always very curious about different, what I would call individual contributor jobs. I wasn't that enamored with the whole people management thing. When you first come out, it felt like it was a lot to deal with. And I was more interested in, in my mind, getting things done. Right. So I spent a lot of time in lots of different individual contributor roles, from software development to being a DBA and a systems engineer, and and even gotten much more involved and deeper into networking from an architecture perspective. And then, I actually, I had dabbled in some people management before I came to Red Hat, and then got more involved in making that journey to people management. And, I think what was for me, it got to a point where I felt like I've done everything I could do in the technology space. And it was really time to sort of, grow in a different way. And I think the other thing that was kind of a parallel to that is you have your kids, and you're raising them, and you're coming at it from a very different perspective relative to how you support and enable people going forward. So I really embrace it. Red Hat's given me so many great opportunities, to expand my leadership skills, just within the jobs that I've had, but also in some of the leadership programs that I've been fortunate enough to get involved in. So that's all culminated in, opportunity, meeting demand. And I'm really just really blessed and fortunate to be in this position. It's really exciting to be a CIO in an IT company, so it's challenging, but very, very fun.
Yeah, Jim. Yeah, it is fascinating. I've been with Red Hat a little over 2 years myself, but to watch some of the journeys internally, you look, our CEO,
Matt.
Matt started in IT.
Mhm.
16 years. Not a straight line, but to that, you came in, in the IT organization, worked your way up through a number of roles. 12 years. You're sitting in the C-suite as the CIO. A lot of topics I want to go into from a technology standpoint, but you talked a little bit about family. So before we go into this, I hear you and your son some baseball connections. I just want to touch on.
Yes, Stu. So sports, big part of my family. And my brother and I were, very competitive athletes. I played baseball through college, a little bit afterwards, and both my kids and my wife were big athletes. My daughter was a collegiate soccer player, and my son was a collegiate baseball player. Just graduated from University of North Carolina recently, and was fortunate enough to get drafted by the Colorado Rockies. And so he's starting his professional journey. I think he has a little more upside than I did. So we'll see how that plays out. But sports has been a huge part of my life, and I think it's actually really been a big part of having a better recognition of what creates great teams. And so it will always be a big part of me.
Yeah. Congratulations to your family on that. Hope your son's journey is one we want to keep an eye on. But yeah, those team dynamics are definitely pretty interesting. The role of IT and the business has gone through, just tremendous transformation. I think, you've been at Red Hat for 12 years. 12 years ago, it was more, I'm curious from a Red Hat standpoint. I look externally, it was like, well, IT was often a cost center. Did you get involved with the product? Absolutely. But I know one of the projects you worked on was Red Hat on Red Hat. So, talk a little bit about that, and how has the role of IT in Red Hat changed in the time that you've been on board?
Yeah. Oh gosh, it's really changed dramatically, and I think to your point, back when I first joined, the company was growing so fast and so quick. IT was really just relied on to make sure I get my laptop, make sure I get my mail, kind of stay out of the way a little bit, just do the commodity based things, and just allow us to do what we need to do from a selling and engineering perspective. Well, that's tremendously, it's changed tremendously. And, with us being able to add, in the digital age, more productivity services that allow us to have these kinds of conversations and figuring out how to get folks to start to be more efficient in how they work every day. But, I think we've become a much closer a partner with our engineering organization as we've actually implemented open hybrid cloud internally here to support our business needs. And even with sales, that you mentioned the Red Hat on Red Hat program. I was fortunate enough to be part of something similar, at Cisco, and I saw how much power it could provide to the sales organization around understanding how we leverage our own product. I mean, you hear all the different cliches, eat your own dog food, drink your own champagne, whatever. But the point being that when people are really trying to make an investment from an IT perspective, it really helps to hear from the IT organization that is responsible for implementing it in your own in the vendor itself. And so when we talk to folks, we spend a lot of time not talking about the product capability, but more about what's it take to make it work. Right? What's it take to operationalize it? What are the things you should be thinking about? The good, the bad, the ugly. They get a very objective viewpoint, and the sales and marketing team has been great about letting us, not be like we don't need to do the kumbaya speech. They really want to hear what's it going to take to be effective, right? And so the program that we have now, led by Jim Strong and my team, does a tremendous job of getting the right folks across my team to be participant in those conversations with customers. So it feels really good. So we got both sides of the equation. We're helping to drive the product forward based on our usage and our utilization of it, but we're also able to help sell it. Albeit in a modest way. It's still we feel like we're helping on both sides of the equation, which is that was not even thought about 13 or 14 years ago.
Yeah. So Jim, you mentioned, the core strategy we've been talking about for over a decade at Red Hat is open hybrid cloud.
Yep.
Cloud has gone through a tremendous amount of change in the last decade. Red Hat, now we're over 20,000 employees. We globally, distributed. Can you give us a little bit of insight as to how public cloud plays a role into IT? How did that adoption look like? Any challenges or key learnings that you've had along the way with we are both a partner and a customer of a lot of public cloud services.
Yeah, I think it's been a really interesting journey. I think public cloud was, even 5 or 6 years ago was sort of a blip on people's radar. There was a little dabbling going on. I think nobody really understood how it fit into the big picture. We were fortunate. I mean, again, sometimes it's opportunity. We were kind of locked into sort of a legacy on-prem arrangement, 5 or 6 years ago, and we really started to consult with consulting and engineering around how do we kind of start anew, right? How do we start to look at embracing what we're selling to our customers, the open hybrid cloud? And so I think that one of the most important things that we did was we started to think about our workloads, right? So we think about it as applications, but we like to call them workloads because they're not always necessarily nice and clean applications. There could be scripts, there could be all kinds of different things that run on infrastructure, but trying to get a better sense of like what we had and what we wanted to modernize and what did we want to run in the cloud, whether it's software as a service or running our customized applications either on-prem or in the public cloud. So I think as we see our transformation from a Red Hat perspective to offering our software as a service in the public cloud on any of the hyperscalers, we've been looking to figure out how we can embrace that. And so when we decided to move out of our legacy, kind of what I would say is our primary business systems data center a few years ago, it was an opportunity to reset, right? And think about what workloads we wanted to run where, depending on the nature of their reliability, availability requirements, even the user base and where they resided. So we started down that path, and so we created flight plans around and working with all the different stakeholders, not just in IT, but we obviously run applications that may be supported outside of our organization. So we worked with all the stakeholders to kind of come up with a game plan of do you want to use this as an opportunity to modernize? This is an opportunity to sort of rationalize your portfolio and not move this thing forward, or is it's still something that we want to keep on-prem for a variety of reasons, usually around compliance, data regulations, et cetera. So. And then also looked at, areas where, hey, maybe we want to be able to spike because of workloads that happen on a quarterly basis. Where's there an opportunity to leverage both on-prem and public cloud for that? So I think we've been really hand in hand with like our evolution of our product in the cloud. So we continue to utilize that. We've been really focused on looking at getting it right in one of the hyperscalers first before we start to expand to the other ones. Because also, as time has moved on, the value proposition around running in, whether it's Amazon or Google or Microsoft or IBM or any of the other public cloud providers, we want to be able to broker a conversation that says, hey, we think your workload fits best here, with this type of a stack. So we've been kind of methodically working through that. So we are truly hybrid cloud today. We run probably, if you look at our business critical systems that are not software as a service, we're almost 50-50 public cloud and on-prem, which is pretty impressive, given some of the legacy software that we've had to evolve. But it's been definitely been a journey. I think we definitely leverage our product in the public cloud. We've also done a really good job of thinking about what the ecosystem around our software needs to be. If you think about monitoring and logging and CI/CD pipelines and things that support agile delivery, we've been doing I think a pretty good job of looking at how we can partner with some of the other vendors that are not Red Hat to try to create a very easy enablement opportunity for our development teams or even our solution delivery teams to put their workloads in this environment, right? So we want to make it seamless for them. We want to make it sure what they don't really know where their workload's running. They just know that we're offering an environment where they can live and they can be successful and focus on the functionality that they need to transform the business.
Yeah, well, Jim, I love it. You encapsulated that journey that, I'm about once a week, I'm in our briefing center talking to, our customers. And a lot of times they're in the early portion of, that 3 to 5 year journey. And one of the big questions a lot of them have is like, oh, okay, I have my application portfolio. I'm going to start modernizing and changing, but, will it be, 10%, 50%, 70%, what goes in the public cloud? Do I make any wrong move and have to, switch something back? Are there any things that you learned along the way that either, impacted, Red Hat products or, guidance that we give from, the innovation labs, because one of those things, we as humans are usually awful at is, predicting and understanding what's going to change. So, it sounds like you've gone through most of that transformation and, reach whatever sort of, steady state, we ever have in the ever changing world. But, any kind of key things or, learnings that went to other parts of the business.
Yeah, I think there's quite a few. I'll try to hit kind of the high points too. I think that having a forcing function which was like, hey, we wanted to put a line in the sand. Hey, we want to be out of this environment by X, right? Because we have, we generally sign up to 3-year leases in our data center environment. So we knew we had a couple of years to kind of get it right, and it was a forcing function to drive that prioritization. However, that's not naturally going to happen for everybody, right? So I think one of the things that's real important is that you really look at your portfolio first. Right. So one of the things that we focused on when I mentioned the flight plans is we really went portfolio by portfolio. And also we looked at the portfolio relative to how does that workload exist today? Right. Is it a, proprietary application? Is it a custom application? What is it? Right. And really tried to help drive those portfolio owners around what's the evolution of your technology stack that supports your business value stream, right? That you're trying to, you're there to enable, right? And that drove a very methodical look at like how we wanted to approach each of the applications or workloads, right? So I think it's real important to have a structured approach around this. But the thing is that what you can't do is just go say, hey, I'm going to modernize my entire application inventory, because that's just a road to nowhere, because there's going to always be a bigger priority that's going to throw your plan. And when you create these giant programs, they're going to get disrupted because business happens, things happen in companies, and it's better to break these things up and focus on where you really have an opportunity to make change, right? So, for example, if your business process is changing, and that really impacts a certain portfolio of your applications, use that as an opportunity to look at, hey, where can I modernize? Where do I maybe want to go to a software as a service approach? Maybe I just want to leverage this proprietary application in the public cloud because I get a better, total cost of ownership. So my biggest point would be break this up in consumable chunks, right? Don't try to boil the ocean. And the other thing is, I think as it relates to our product, I think what was really interesting as we started to go down this journey is that the integration between different, parts of the stack, whether it was the network, whether it was our load balancers, whether it was the, OpenShift, our development platform, even Splunk, monitoring platforms, that integration and how to create that. We actually probably put in a lot of, requests and patches and to our engineering team to sort of give them visibility to things that other customers were going to see. So I think we had a little bumpy ride there for a period of time as we were getting started, but it really helped the engineering team understand, we got to resolve that. Let's figure that out, right? So I think that really helped. And I think on the application side, I think it's you really need to you need to carve out time to make it a priority, right? So Your backlog is always going to be shifting in terms of, what's most important at the moment. But if you do not make time, right, to work through that rationalization of your portfolio, whether it's just a small chunk of it or a larger chunk of it, you don't establish the right roles. You need architects, you need BSAs, you need developers. You also need to have folks that understand the full stack, right? Because when you go into a hybrid cloud environment, we've heard that DevOps term so much, but you really do need to understand the different components of the stack and how they're integrated in order to be effective. So making sure you have the skill sets to move your portfolio forward into this environment is really important too. So skill sets on the application side, really understand what you're getting involved in. So you have the right folks, whether you're hiring them or you're leveraging outside services. Certainly on the engineering side, we've helped our own product team, we've helped other product teams and other vendors understand the integration challenges, and then, break it up into small chunks so that you can actually be successful. And then you'll learn something from that experience, and it'll help you as you start to evolve through the rest of your inventory.
Yeah. So Jim, you mentioned a hot button word that I want to poke on for a second. The cloud, many of the services, they're proprietary. Red Hat, from a product standpoint, all of our products are open source. How does IT and Red Hat, how do you deal with that? I mean, I know I've seen things. It's like, we should use only open source tools. It's hey, we're on the G Suite, we're using, different things out there, Splunk, there's, it's tough, and absolutely there's certain things that you don't have choices on. So how do you reconcile? How does your team deal with the general open source, and does that flavor IT different for Red Hat that it might most organizations?
Oh, go Stu. That's a great question, because that's our life here at Red Hat IT, right? So and other companies are I'm sure are trying to figure out, like, how do you think through this? I think Paul Cormier at one point said, we're a software company with an open source development model, right? And we really lean on that relative to how we think about how we're approaching a particular capability that we need to provide, right? So, we obviously are enormous advocates for the open source community, but where we really focus our energy is where we're trying to make inroads in the marketplace. So we obviously want to be a great first customer of our product, right? So, we spend a lot of time really working to figure out how to leverage our own product as part of the open source community's contributions. How do we leverage that to solve business problems? So we start there. Now, obviously, as we look outside of what we do as a software company, there are lots of different open source options, certainly in the productivity space, and in other areas as well. And what we try to lead with is we believe that there's an open source alternative, right, that we believe has the scale and the capability to support our business requirements. We're going to look at it, right? But we don't always lead with it's got to be open source, right? And that definitely has created a little bit of consternation in the company, because we have a lot of passionate people around open source and a lot of folks that are contributing to things even beyond our own product. But the reality is we have a business to run here, and we have to make sure that we're providing the best capability to support the need, right? So it's a combination of a lot of different things that go into that decision making. But we have a lot of open source products, but we also have a lot of proprietary products when we feel like it's important for us to do in order to be able to satisfy our requirements.
Yeah, Jim, I'm curious what your thoughts are being a CIO of a software company. I look at, before you joined Red Hat, you were at Cisco. Cisco historically very much a hardware company. Mm-hmm. They've been going through a huge transformation to be more of a software company. I know, especially over the last 5 years or so, many cloud acquisitions, aligning themselves. They're a good partner of ours also. So software company, and we're going through our own transformation about partnering and adopting cloud, launching more cloud services. So how does that impact being a CIO compared to, not being at a software company?
Yeah, no, that's another really good question. I think that, there's a couple different angles to that, right? I would say that, the first part of it is that, yes, we are definitely helping and leveraging our products that are being moved to as a service in the public cloud. So OpenShift, we leverage OpenShift Dedicated. We leverage Ansible. We leverage RHEL. I mean, we leverage all of that both on-prem and in the public cloud as a service. The other thing, though, that I think is going to be really, really will resonate with a lot of folks out there in the IT world is that, but it's more than the product, right? It's like, how do you? We're moving from a subscription-based business, right, where you download the software for free, but you pay for support and the evolution of the product as a subscription, to a consumption-based model, right, where folks are leveraging our product either as managed service or just in the hyperscalers, and they're going to pay for what they use, right, or what they consume, and so when you start to think about what that means from a back office business model perspective, that is driving us to think about how we support this, not just from a customer relationship management perspective or even an ERP perspective, but what's the nature of the data that we need to be able to consume from the hyperscalers in order for us to be able to understand how our consumers, either our existing business or potentially folks that are dabbling, how do we help our sales organization, our marketing organization, even our engineering product BUs to how they need to evolve the product, or how they go after these prospective clients, or continue to upsell these clients that we already have. So that telemetry data and how we consume it, and how we get it in the right hands in real time through our transactional systems is a real challenge, right? And it's one of the big things that we're going through right now as a company is how do we move from a subscription-based business, which is a very, very powerful business, is going to continue to be around for quite some time, but as more and more folks try to take advantage of the public cloud, they're going to be consuming our product in a different way. And so we need to be able to embrace that and continue to grow that. And IT plays a significant role in that, because if we can pull the right data and get it in the right place, in the right systems at the right time, and in a much faster, it's much more real time now than it has been, right? And so we're going through that evolution today, with the Office of Chief Operating Officer office. We're all part of one big Chief Operating Office now, and that's great because we need global process transformation. We need an enterprise architecture that enables that. We've got to be one team, right? And so that's been a real change, in the last couple of years. And so I think that will resonate with a lot of folks out there, because it's more, it's not just, for us, it's not just how do we use our own products, like how do we bring that product to bear and get the information we need so we can grow our business.
Awesome. Hey, I just want to shout out to those people listening. I appreciate any questions coming in. I saw we had one come in from Switzerland, which, I think Jim addressed kind of the general position about how IT thinks about open source. Specific open source projects, might not be, Jim might not be the best person for that, but please keep the questions coming. So Jim, if I have it right, I think that today might actually be your 90 days in the position.
Yeah.
And we're also, we've been pretty much doing 2023 planning. So my next question for you is, what have you learned in your first 90 days? And, what kind of goals can you share for the team as we look out through 2023?
Yeah. Wow. I would say that coming into this role, you always expect that you're going to learn a lot more than you ever really imagined that's going on. Obviously, I've had a chance to play a lot of different roles within IT here at Red Hat. So I wouldn't say that I came in and I've really, anything has kind of blown me away. Wow, like I didn't know that. But I think it's just, I sense just a tremendous opportunity, for IT to be in the, a cornerstone to, the transformation of our business, right? And so a lot of my time right now is spent on really trying to understand what is the critical path for us from an enterprise architecture perspective that we have got to make inroads on in order for us to be able to achieve the business transformation that we're trying to, right? In conjunction with other operating teams that need to be a part of that, because it's not just about technology. It's, it's technology and process and people and change management. So I think the biggest thing, for me right now is, as I strategize with my peers, is just we've got so much to do. It's easy to get overwhelmed. So what we're really trying to do is really define that critical path, right? We're on a 2 or 3 year journey. What can we get done in the next year? What's most important for us to get done? Are we having these conversations with our stakeholders together? Are we all aligned on things that we need to do together, right, in CY23 to move the needle forward? And that's where all my energy is right now. There are obviously a lot of other things that we're concerned about. Obviously, data compliance. We're trying to get more mature in those areas so that we're conscious of some of the challenges across the globe around risk and data risk. So that's a big area right now. The other area I would say is just the changing nature of our workforce, right? The nature of how we come and we operate today, right? We obviously the pandemic has created it's really thrown a wrench in how people operate. And when something like that happens over a 2 year period, people change their styles, change their approach. So we're really we work very, very hard with our global real estate team around what we need from a commercial office building perspective. What are the types of capabilities that we need to provide that will really be a value add for people coming into the office? But how do we continue to sustain our services and our products that we need for folks to be effective remotely, right? Because folks can really work anywhere these days, but how do we ensure that they can collaborate and coordinate effectively amongst the team? So those are kind of the big 3 things that, we're really focused on. Obviously, we're always incented to try to streamline our costs and be as efficient as we can. So that's a big area that I'm looking at right now, is what's the value proposition for the organization going forward? Do we have the right skill sets? Are we right sized in the right places based on the run rate we have? So those are kind of the things that are top of mind for me now. And, I think will continue to be for at least another year or 2.
Yeah, well, Jim, kudos to the team, because I was a pandemic hire for Red Hat, and understanding how Red Hat dealt with remote was one thing that brought me to the company. And I'd say Red Hat was good, and Red Hat learned, listened, and has gotten even better over the last 2 years. So
that's good to hear.
Congratulations. And yeah, it's not an easy thing, because those of us with a networking background, it's like I was actually in the Boston office and had a little bit of a glitch with a live stream when the entire the office network had 5 minutes that were bad, and it was yikes. Maybe at home I actually have a steadier stream. It's those balances between what you have. I want to pull on a thread that you mentioned. So we talked about the change that IT, and what I loved is you really helped accentuate. IT went from a cost center to really a cornerstone and a driver for the business. You mentioned data, and the challenge we all have is there's, on the one hand, I need to worry about governance and compliance and all of those new regulations. On the other hand, one of the biggest opportunities we have is to leverage data and analytics. And boy, I see some of the internal threads we have about all the hot new AI things and how can we take advantage of that. So, you sit in the middle of a lot of that. So, one of the definitions we used to have when I was on the analyst side is digital transformation. At the end of it, you should be data driven, and the decisions should be driven by data and all that sort of thing. So how does that angle of data fit into your world?
Yeah, and data is so integral in not only helping us understand how we're doing, but where we're going. And so I would say that certainly in the last 2 or 3 years that we have been very, very focused on ensuring we can measure the effectiveness of what we're doing, right? So, and data comes in all different sizes and shapes. And so we work very closely with our enterprise and data analytics team. That's part of the overall operating office to ensure we have the right platforms and we have the right capabilities that we need. But I would say that, the other thing that is definitely emerging is that a lot of our business units are very, very focused on analytics and data science. And so our ability to provide some enhanced capabilities in that regard is something that we're focused on, because we want to basically teach people to fish, right? The days of IT having to run reports and is really long gone, right? I mean, we really just need to be able to offer the platforms that allow folks to do that, but we've got to be able to have the data in a structured, clean way, right? So that it's reliable, so that when folks do report on it, there's not multiple sources of truth. There's not 20 different versions of the same thing. We were really spending a lot of time from an enterprise architecture perspective thinking about like what are the kind of the key data elements for the company that we need to master. How do we get that information to the right places, and then how do we create the right data lakes and warehouses for folks to operate on? But our job is becoming more on the reporting and analytics and data science side, is becoming more about providing the platforms and the capabilities and the data in a governed, structured way, so that folks can figure out what the actionable insights are through their own mechanisms. So that's a big focus for us. It's going to continue to be a huge focus for us. And I can say that, even when we're doing larger projects and programs, when we've got a few that are on, they're getting ready to get underway, we're spending less time building big fluffy business cases, and we're spending more time thinking about what are the key KPIs that would allow us to know that whatever we're doing, whatever change we're making, we can measure what the impact of it is, right? And again, sometimes that's just and that takes and I would really urge people to spend the time to think about that, right? Because you got to have a baseline, and you got to know where you're going, and you got to be able to measure that you're getting there, right? Or course correct, right? So that's driving both more thought around what are we trying to achieve, right? Versus, hey, let's get this new technology thing out there. But also, it's also challenging us to think about all the different data sources that we have to pull into play and converge in some way that makes the data consumable, right, to the folks that need to drive insights from it.
Awesome. So, Jim, last question I have for you. We talked at the top of the interview. Your resume, it looks like a steady kind of journey towards where you got, but we know there's some zigs and zags, and it's not just a straight walk down a single path. What advice would you give to people in the IT industry? Because projects are way shorter, technology is changing all the time, there's way more domains than any of us can ever master, and the role of the CIO is going through tremendous change. So what advice would you give as you reflect back?
Yeah, I think as I mentioned at the top, there's no one path, right? I think everybody knows that there's no one path to a role like this. I think the key thing is continue to be curious, where you're passionate, where you're interested, dive into it, get involved in it, learn something, and then continue to challenge yourself to grow, right? I think the other thing is that it doesn't get easier, right? I think I saw a really good video clip from Kara Lawson, former basketball player, is doing a lot of speaking now, and she goes, what you want to be good at is being good at dealing with the things as they get harder, right? It doesn't get easier, right? It continues to get harder. The industry changes all the time, but follow your passions, follow what you enjoy doing. That will lead and open different doors, and be okay going into them, right? And ultimately, I think as you get more exposed and you get more experiences, the forks in the road will become clearer. Right. And so, this kind of a job is not for everybody, but it's certainly, I think, there's so many people from so many different backgrounds that can do this job well, in my opinion. Right. So it's just more about following your passions, be curious, and don't set unrealistic timelines for yourself relative to, I've got to be here at this point. Continue to challenge yourself. If you continue to challenge yourself, then it will lead to bigger things.
Yeah, and that's Jim. I'll give a +1. That handle hard better is the video.
Handle hard better.
We'll throw it up in the chat there. I think it's a great thing. I've seen it bouncing around both internally and externally of Red Hat, because the advice you give is, you are responsible for your career. So take advantage of it. I used to, earlier in my career, I would do, sessions for younger people. And the challenge is, one of my favorite quotes is from Lewis Carroll's, you go up to the Cheshire Cat, Alice in Wonderland, and the cat, which path do I take? And the cat says, well, where are you going? And Alice says, I don't know. And the Cheshire Cat says, well, then any path will do. So if you don't know where you're going, it's going to be really hard to get there. So pick a path, choose a strategy, understand, course correct. It's a little bit of chaos out there, but find peers and mentors that can help you there. Jim, I really awesome conversation. Really love chatting with you here. Hopefully we'll cross paths with you in person in one of our buildings this year. Thank you so much. Congrats on the progress that you make, and thanks to all you've been doing to help Red Hat in the industry.
Well, it's a pleasure, Stu. Great to be with you. I appreciate the opportunity, and I'm sure I'll see you around.
All right. Everybody, thank you so much for watching. We do try to do these every other week. When we can, we keep it at the same time, same place. If you have recommendations as to topics or guests, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm super easy to find through the social channels. I'm over on Mastodon now, on the Hackaderm. I still do check that Twitter feed every once in a while. But thank you for watching us, and thank you for joining us on your journey in the clouds.